and well, they have a wide breadth of knowledge on both medications, pharmacology, as well as physiology and pathophysiology. And they were some of my best teachers when I was a house officer at Stanford. So she brings this body of knowledge and then integrates it with this ancient body of knowledge we call Ayurveda. Ayurveda stands for the science of life, or the knowledge of life, or the knowledge of lifespan. So we're looking forward to her presentation. The presentation is noteworthy because the South Asian Heart Center is based on our MEDS program. And we like to say that the MEDS program is our platform in which we help people decrease their risk of diabetes and cardiovascular disease. But we also describe it as a science-based Vedic approach to health. And that, if you go back historically, we were the first ones that describe and put importance in the sleep as a preventive behavior for cardiovascular disease. Initially, that was not part of the American Heart Association 7. Now it's the 8th on the American Heart Association 8. That was based on statement in the Bhagavad Gita, who is taught by Manju, saying that yoga is for he who does not sleep or sleeps too much. And that's what the science shows. You sleep too much, you have diabetes, cancer. You sleep too little, you have hypertension and coronary artery disease. So you're not here to sort of listen to me talk. You're actually here to sort of listen to her present her beautiful presentation. So please go ahead and welcome her, and we're looking forward to your talk.
It is my honor, Dr. Molina, and thank you so much for your wonderful introduction. And I am in such awe that you were able to quote all the, quote sutras from Bhagavad Gita, from chapter 6 of Bhagavad Gita, where you were saying about he who sleeps more or sleeps less is not eligible to practice yoga, or not eligible, or not will not have proper health. So I am very, very impressed, and it would be an honor for me to know more of what you have been doing and how you were introduced to the Vedic science. Because when you asked me where you're from, when I'm from India, it is easy for me to, incorporate Vedic science. But very impressed with what you have been doing at South Asian Heart Center, and Ashish, with all the things that you have presented at South Asian Heart Center. Kudos to you. It's not easy for a nonprofit organization to pull all of this together. So it is an honor for me to be here today. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Yes. With that, I will be starting my presentation today. And before we start our presentation, let us all ground ourselves. It is almost end of the week, and we're here to get something out of the presentation. So I would invite those of you who are able to, if you're driving, then that's okay. But those of you who are able to, close your eyes and just be with yourself and see what is it that we're able to absorb from the presentation in the next 45 minutes, an hour long. Take a deep breath in and breath out. I'm going to chant a small verse. Namami dhanvantarim adidevam surasurairvandita padapadmam loke jararugбhayamrityunasham धातारमीशं विविधौषधीनाम् ॐ गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णु गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुः साक्षात् परं ब्रह्मा तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः. All right, welcome all again. I'm going to start sharing my screen. I just want to know that you're able to see my screen. Yes? Okay, perfect. So we're going to talk about Ayurveda for everyday balance, right? A lot of us here, we might have heard the term Ayurveda in the past, or some of us might not have heard the term. just because I'm not able to see you. It's not a live presentation. I cannot see how many of you actually know Ayurveda. So I'm going to assume that this is something that I'm going to introduce again, but I'm more than happy to answer questions at the end, right? As Dr. Molina has mentioned, I've done my master's in pharmaceutics, and ever I was intrigued by the pharmacology of how all the medicines would work, and about the understanding of pathology of how the disease process works and how the medicine will, undo things. I was intrigued by that, and I was always fascinated. But once I started practicing it, it became a little bit mundane for me. And that's when I think Ayurveda just happened to me. But the same curiosity of how it happened, the detective nature, is what I still do today. And that's what I would like to introduce to all of you, because we all have to have that freedom of understanding what is happening for us. Why are we experiencing any imbalance? If we're experiencing any imbalance, or if we are healthcare providers, how can we provide that balance to our clients? So that is what we're going to understand about today. Ancient self-care meets modern science. That's how it's going to be. So what is Ayurveda? Like Dr. Molina has mentioned, this is a manual that is given to us by the ancient scientists. I do call them the ancient scientists. They have done research for a long time. And that research that was done 5,000 years ago is still valid. There is no updates or changes. Like the Apple 16 Pro is the 16th one that we have right now, the 16th update that we have received. But it's the same science that was present 5,000 years ago is still valid till date. Ayu is life, and Veda is the science of life. So it is to maintain the health of the healthy, not only treating the diseases of the deceased, but this science is a preventive medicine. So not only do you have to come to us when you are experiencing an imbalances, although that's what we normally see, because a lot of times, because Ayurveda is not covered by any of the insurances, a lot of time we get clients that were not taken care of by other modalities of medicine. And by this time, this is like the last resort, and that's when they come to us. However, the actual definition of Ayurveda is to maintain the health of the healthy and treat the diseases of the deceased. Now, what is the definition of health, right? The definition of health by WHO is absence of disease, right? But this definition of health that is given 5,000 years ago is read as samadoshaha samagnischa samadhatu malakriyaha prasanna atmendriya manaha swastha iti abhidhiyate. And I'm going to explain what that means. One whose doshas are in balance, and I'm introducing new terminology here. I know I'm introducing the terminology called doshas. These are the elements, the bio elements that are functioning in our body. I'm talking to you, I'm moving my fingers. When I'm moving my fingers, then my bio element of air and space is moving properly, and that's why I'm able to move. I am talking to you, and you're able to understand what I'm speaking. Your bio element of heat is working well, and that is why you're able to understand. You're able to sit in a seat without having to move. You're stable. That stability is being provided to you by the bio element, water and earth element. So all these doshas that are present, all these bio elements must be in balance. And whose agni is in balance. We're going to talk about what that agni is. Agni is your digestive fire that is present in your body, and whose dhatus are working at best, which means your tissues, your plasma, blood, muscle, fat, bones, bone marrow. All of these must be working at their best. And then whose malas are in balance. What is mala? It is your waste management system. They're talking about the elements that is allowing you to work, the element of transformation, the tissues that are allowing you to function, sustain, and the waste management system, which is your feces, urine, and sweat, must be working also properly. And he did not stop there, because Ayurveda is not just the science of your body, it is also a science of your mind and soul. And he says here, whose soul, senses, and mind are always full of bliss is called a healthy person. Now, if we look back, close our eyes, and look at, is this what we are experiencing really daily? Are our senses working the way they're supposed to? Are our eyes working the sharpest? Hearing capacity, tasting capacity, smelling, all of these, is this working the way it was when we were in our teens? Is it working the same way in our 60s and 70s as well? Are we happy all the time? What is the mind going through? All of these also matters. That is when you're called a healthy person. Yeah, so that is the definition of health. Now, maintaining the rhythms, there are universal rhythms. Right now, it is summer. My in-laws were here until last week. They came from India. They were confused when we were asking them to eat their dinner at 6:30. They were like, it is super light. I mean, there's light. How can we eat when there is light outside, right? So we have summer days until 9 p.m. and winter, our days ends at about 4 p.m. So the balance and rhythm is happening outside in the universe. Understand that the same rhythm that is allowing the universe to function, the sun to rise and the moon to rise and the seasons to change, all of this rhythm is happening in our body as well. The hormones that come up during the beginning of our menstrual cycle, mid-cycle, end of the cycle, or what happens, what are the kind of hormones that are released in the beginning of the day, midday, end of the day? What is that rhythm that is allowing us to understand? Right now, it's evening. We're almost there. I mean, we've done a lot of work in the day, and this is the time for winding down. Ideally, this is the time that we're supposed to be winding down, taking a good cup of chai and chai pe charcha, right? Having like a conversation with our friends, understanding what's happening, talking to them about what is happening, what has happened throughout the day. That's the rhythm that has been built, and these rhythms have been maintained throughout the time. So these rhythms, because they were disturbed, and we're going to talk about how the disturbance has happened. That disturbance has created the disturbance in the doshas, in the agni, in your tissues, in the waste management system, and the mind as well. Yeah. So that is what we're going to talk about. Now we're going to elaborate a little bit more about this definition of health and what this agni concept is, what this digestive fire concept is, because it's unique to Ayurveda. Elaborating the agni concept. Agni is digestive fire. I know I use the terminology here, but I just wanted all of us to even be familiar with the terminology, and that's why I use the word agni here. But understand, agni is your digestive fire. It's really your enzymes that are breaking down the food, our lipase, pancreas, all of these enzymes that are breaking down the food comprises of agni. Now, if your oven is at 350 is functioning and working at 350 degrees Fahrenheit, then you'll be able to bake your cookies. You can put your cookie dough and your cookies are going to be baked properly and you can happily eat your cookie. Imagine the same oven goes up to 500 degrees Fahrenheit. What's going to happen to your cookies? They're going to be burned and charred. Imagine if your oven does not heat up beyond 100 degrees Fahrenheit, then the cookie stays back without converting into a cookie dough stays back without converting into a cookie, right? So that is what we're talking about. We're talking about balanced agni. Exactly what Dr. Molina has mentioned earlier. That's what's written in Bhagavad Gita also. There's nothing It's always that balance. There's nothing low or nothing high. This balanced Agni, we're talking about that kitchen fire, that oven that is responsible for the conversion of our food into tissues. We've all eaten our breakfast, our lunch. What is happening to all of that? You're still maintaining the weight that you have. You're maintaining your 100, 110, 125 pounds forever. Or maybe you put on some weight and maybe you lose some weight. But generally, when you get to a certain age, you maintain that same weight, even though you're eating your food. What is that phenomenon that is allowing this conversion? That phenomenon is balanced Agni. That is what is responsible for converting your oatmeal or your avocado or your sausage, whatever you've eaten, into your plasma, into your blood, into your muscle, your fat, your bones. All of these are formed. So next time when you're eating that French fries, when you're drinking that cold smoothie in the night, remember that this same thing is converting into your body. Yeah. If Agni is more than normal, it can burn your essential tissues. This is what happens in inflammation, right? Autoimmune condition. What is an autoimmune condition? Where your own immunity is eating up your own tissues. When the heat in the body is much more than what is necessary, that is when this burning of the tissues is going to happen. And if you have less Agni, if you have weak Agni, weak digestive fire, then you're easily succumb to diseases and viruses. When COVID happened, we never knew what to expect. We never knew why some people were exposed and why some people were not. So this is the phenomenon in Ayurveda. We talk about weak Agni. So if you have weak Agni, it will not digest, even though you eat the best of the foods. A lot of time people come to me. They're like, I'm eating the best possible food. I still am experiencing this. So we have to correct that digestive fire, right? So that is the Agni concept. Now, to maintain all of this, to maintain this health properly, there are 3 pillars that are mentioned in Ayurveda. We call them Traya Upastambha. These 3 pillars that are present in Ayurveda is what we're going to talk about next. And I would like for you to put your utmost attention here, because I believe that this is the same that is a motto of South Asian Heart Center as well, where the first pillar is the food guidelines. Eating warm and moist foods. Remember, our body temperature is always temperate. It is warm and moist. If you look at your abdomen, the kind of temperature that you have is always warm and moist. It is not hot and dry like Arizona, or it is not cold as in Alaska, right? Because you know that in Arizona, there's only so much that can grow. In Alaska, there's only so much of, there's not a lot of flora and fauna in Arizona or in Alaska compared to in Florida. Because in Florida, it's always warm and moist. So this is the first and foremost thing that we have to remember when we're eating our food. Am I maintaining that warmth and moist still? Or is this food disturbing that environment inside? When you're eating that cold ice cream in the night, oh, this is going to create cold environment. If this creates cold environment, then this disrupts my digestive fire. If this disrupts my digestive fire, then it will not digest whatever I have eaten. Then this stays back. Remember cookie dough, and that cookie dough stinks and smells and creates all of the problems that we have spoken about. So whenever we are eating, this is the first and foremost thing that we have to remember. Again, reheating food does not add more fire. When I'm saying warm and moist, when you have cooked it, that's when it has that inherent heat, the heat that it already has inside, not introducing heat by microwaving it later. The original fire carries over. Your fire can talk to the fire in the food, will be able to break it down, will be able to make it again. Yeah, so that is the most important thing that I wanted to let you know about. And measure your meals into 4 portions. Eat only 3/4 your capacity. Eat 2 parts of solid and 1 part of liquid. Always remember, when you're making a pot full of pasta, if you're cooking pasta, if a pot can handle cooking half a pack of pasta and you cram in a full pack of pasta into it, you can imagine what's going to happen. Half of the pasta is going to be cooked, half of it is not going to be cooked. It's going to be overflowing. At least it overflows and comes out of the stove. We don't have that overflow mechanism in our tummy. We have to have that gap because you need to create that churning. If that churning is not created, then the food will not be broken down. Every time, remember this concept that food that is eaten must be broken down. So 2 parts of solid and 1 part of liquid, which allows for that proper bolus to be formed. And proper grains, introduce some lentils, introduce some vegetables. And if you are a meat eater, and this is very important that we talk about in Ayurveda, that we do not talk about converting a meat eater into a vegetarian or a vegetarian into a meat eater, because your genetics are made in such a way that they can break down the food that it is used to from ancestors, right? So if your muscles are used to getting that kind of calories or getting that kind of nourishment and nutrition from the meat, then it is necessary that you provide that. If not, you know that you are creating that kind of lack to your muscle. And we'll talk a little bit about it. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer that questions, because I myself grew up as a meat eater, but I quit eating meat for the past 18 years. And that is more of a spiritual reasons. But I do know that physically, it is not the right thing to do for my physical tissues, right? So that is something that you should know when you're making that switch. So introducing proper amount. So we're not talking about calories here. Remember that we're not saying eat a 2000 calorie diet or introduce carbs, introduce proteins. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about what are the qualities of the foods that you should introduce. They should be warm, moist, eat 3/4 your capacity, and you should have a good combination of grains, and it should have some lentils, and it should have some vegetables. So there you've covered the carbs, proteins, etc. And 1 part of a liquid in the form of buttermilk, etc. Buttermilk is a very, very good probiotic, which will allow for the breakdown again. And just on this slide, I can spend the whole hour, because how we eat, what time we eat makes a difference. Leela, I have a question. What time do I have until to speak? I did not ask you.
I think we end at 7.
Okay.
So maybe we can give 15 minutes of,
Okay,
10 to
15 to 20 minutes of time. Okay, so I just wanted to know that way. I'll time myself that way. Thank you. So this is something that I wanted to talk about. And of course, I've given you some research articles of how eating proper food in a proper way will also affect your mental health. Tan mana bhunjita is what Ayurveda talks about, where you sit down and you focus on the food that you eat, because the thoughts that you have while you're eating your food will also be responsible in digesting your food and will be responsible in making your tissues. So if you're eating your food while having a conversation, while having a debate, while watching TV, then understand that that conversation must be a happy and healthy conversation. If this is a conversation that involves increase in excitatory neurotransmitters, then they will be mixed with the food that you eat, and that is how your tissues are formed. So I've included a research article about it, and it'll be important for all of you to go through and understand that as well. Yeah. So then we're gonna talk
Manju,
about.
I've just posted that link on
Oh,
the
perfect.
chat, okay?
Perfect. Thank you, Ashish. Now that's the first pillar, and we'll talk about it, the combinations and such, if we get to at the end of it, because I wanted to cover other things as well, because we're gonna talk about how a lot of times smoothies or some things a lot of people talk about, cold smoothies, especially in the morning. So these are all the things we can talk about at the end when we get to it. But I'm gonna move to the second pillar. Our second pillar is sleep, and I'm glad that S is one of the meds in sleep, because this is the most important thing that I talk about in all my consultations. Today, just today, I've had a client who came in, who's a 71-year-old client, and she's been experiencing dizziness for the past year, and nobody is able to find out. She's brought in this many tests with her. Nobody was able to figure out why she was experiencing dizziness. Her daughter bought her, and she said, my lab tests are much more worse than my mom's, but I don't know why she's experiencing it. I want my mom back. For the past year, she's been experiencing this dizziness, and I do not know what's going on with her. So in her explanation of what has happened, sleep never came up, right? So when we were talking about it, and this is something that I ask everybody, I was like, okay, what's sleep like? What time does she go to bed? She's like, oh, she has a chronic insomnia. And then guess what? She's had chronic insomnia for 25 years now. And when we spoke about the history of what has happened, there was separation, there was so many mental concerns that happened also. And that insomnia was never addressed for 25 years. And that even led to, and she said, oh, there's hearing loss. And it was more of matter of fact, right? So that has even went, and it has also caused a problem in your senses. One of your senses is not working the way it is supposed to. So sleeping on time and waking up on time is the most important thing. And that must be addressed. And this is something that we have to always say, and we cannot take it for granted, because we can say that, I'll provide you with the best bed possible, Posturepedic, Tempur-Pedic, whatever, best temperature and everything. But if we are not focusing on the mind, and if we're not addressing all the factors, remember that sleep will not be the best possible. And what happens is here, there are PubMed articles that I've posted of how it says it is related. It will create metabolic disorders, including CVD as well. Chronic conditions and CVD are caused if you do not sleep properly. Again, very important, along with telling that these many hours to sleep, that you have to definitely sleep for 8 hours to re-energize and recharge both your body and mind. It is also important to tell what time to sleep. Again, remember, go back, and we spoke about the rhythms, right? There's a rhythm that is present outside, and there's a rhythm that is present inside our body too. And that rhythm inside our body, that glymphatic system, is active at this time. All of you are done with your work. You're getting back home. Once you go back to work again next morning, your cubicles and your office will all be neat and clean. That is because a janitor has come in and cleaned out everything while you were not at work. That's the exact phenomenon that's happening while you're at sleep. But that phenomenon happens only between 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. because I get this from a lot of teenagers and even 20s that, oh, I still get my 8 hours sleep. I go to bed at 3 a.m. and wake up at 11 a.m. It is still 8 hours sleep. Yes, but you have to water the plant when it is necessary. You cannot just water whenever you remember. You have to give food whenever it is necessary. The same way, you have to sleep at the exact time. That is going to be beneficial for your health, because this is also allowing you to increase your growth hormone. Your growth hormone is going to be, you know this, right? A lot of times people tell this, babies sleep for almost 22 hours in a day because they need to grow. And when they're growing, the growth hormone is important. So the deepest and the most regenerative sleep occurs between 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. And this in Ayurveda is called as the Pitta Kala. This Pitta Kala is between 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. I know I'm using a terminology. Again, this is the time that for ease of our understanding, the glymphatic system, the clearance of free radicals, all of that happen. If you sleep late at night, it disturbs the body's internal clock or the circadian rhythm, and thus will be increasing the metabolic conditions. Sleeping right this is the easiest way, no? You don't have to go enroll in a program or, enroll somewhere for you to have that proper tissues, nourishing tissues. Yeah. So that is why S of meds is very, very important. And now coming to the third pillar of the Trayopastambha. The third pillar is controlling of the senses. It extends to all, so our senses are present, that is given to us, and humans are the only people that have the free will. Goat does not wake up every morning saying, okay, what do I feel like eating today? Do I want to get Thai or do I want to get Mexican today? No. The same grass, it will chew and chew and chew every single day, and it doesn't get bored. And the same thing with every animal and every bird, that's what happens. Humans are the only ones who have these senses. And these senses are given to us to go to the next level so that we use it. And, there are four pillars that we get to liberation, right? Dharma, righteousness, artha, and earning the money, kama, doing things properly, and then get liberation from this. And that is why the senses are given to us. But in the modernization, what we have done is we've used our senses to the maximum, especially our tongue. We want to eat Thai one day, Mexican one day. Everything is available at our fingertips. We can DoorDash anything and get anything at any time of the day. And the same thing happened today. I was talking to someone and said, maybe finish your dinner by 7:30 because they were experiencing some acidity. I said they were eating at 10:30. I said, okay, let's just try and see if you can finish your dinner at 7:30. The question that was asked was, but what if I'm not able to sleep? What if that dinner is not enough for me? What I ate at 7:30, what if it's not enough for me? She's in her 60s. I was asking her, would you ask the same question? Would your mom's generation or would your grandparents' generation ask the same question? Because they did not have a choice but to shut the shop before light goes off, before the night comes in, right? There was no electricity, there was no bulbs. So they had to shut the shop and they had to finish whatever they were cooking when the light was there. So instead of the reason we're not able to sleep, the reason we don't feel that satiety is our mind keeps working. And to shut that mind down, we are giving food to our tongue. We are satisfying our mind by indulging in the senses. That could be indulging in the sense of watching Netflix. That could be indulging, eating food. All of these activities, right? So we spoke about, we know about how dopamine surge has increased, and this dopamine surge is what is creating all of the problems when you're not in control. And this is where addiction happens, and we could become slave of our senses. Instead of using it to our advantage, we're becoming slave of our senses. So body tries to maintain the equilibrium. And when it is trying to maintain the equilibrium, if you are experiencing that high by playing a video game for 20 minutes one day, and you do that for 7 days, by the end of 7 days, because body is trying to maintain equilibrium, it will not get that high because your dopamine keeps increasing. You would have to play for 30 minutes to get the same high. You would have to play for 40 minutes. So that is how we become slaves to our senses. And it could be all of it. You can, not just the video games, eating, watching, hearing, smelling, all of this can be. So that is why this is also the important pillar. Just like how food is one of the pillars and sleep is the other pillar, senses, controlling your senses is also the third pillar. And we'll talk about how to incorporate all of these. Yeah. So now we'll talk about electrification and chronic diseases. We've touched upon this when I spoke about my client that came in today, that between 1930 to 1950 is when electrification movement began. This allowed us to play with the kala, with the rhythms. This dysregulated our habit patterns and rhythms. I have teenagers in the house and they feel that it is a sin if they go to bed before 12 in the midnight. They're like, wow, mom, it's summer. Who sleeps at 12? Who sleeps before 12, right? So that is how we're playing with our own rhythms. And interestingly, and if you can post this article also, Ashish, we've seen that chronic disease and cardiovascular diseases have seen a massive surge in 1940. This is when electrification has increased. And today, 70% of all the deaths are linked to these chronic diseases. So we can see the correlation of how, in the name of modernization, in the name of how we're using things to help us, we have created a problem. Right? So this is very, very important for us to know, that electrification. And I am also surprised when I go to India now, I have not seen so many restaurants growing up and I have not seen so many hospitals growing up. These are the two lucrative businesses that I'm seeing. And I'm sure when we do a research on that and when we look at it, we'll see a correlation between the increase in the restaurant business. Sorry, if we have any restaurant owners here, don't beat me up. But I'm just stating the fact of how the electrification and chronic diseases, there is a correlation between that. And they've done a research on centenarians, people who've lived past 100. And people who've lived past 100 usually are in the low socioeconomic strata, which means they're not eating any superfoods. They don't wake up and say, let me make this smoothie today. Let me eat this super green today. I want to introduce this, chia seeds. I have to introduce this today. No. Whatever generations have been given to them, that's what they've been eating. And they don't have a refrigeration concept. And those are the people that have lived past 100. Again, living does not mean just living like that, but living healthy way, just like how we have discussed in the beginning. So this, I found it very, very interesting. And this should also put a stamp on what we have spoken about so far in all the three pillars of food, sleep, and senses. So bringing the balance. How can we bring balance? Now, not only can I just give you what the problems are, not only can I tell you what it is, but I have to tell you, how can we bring them back to balance and how can we be in charge of our own health? What is Ayurveda saying it? Now, all the excitatory neurotransmitters, like the cortisol, dopamine, serotonin, norepinephrine, these are all on the rise when you wake up. If they're not on the rise in the morning, then you cannot even wake up. The fact that you're able to wake up from the bed is that these excitatory neurotransmitters are on the rise in the morning as soon as you wake up. But we don't want the nervous system to be on that flight or fight mode throughout the day. As you wake up, if you use these excitatory neurotransmitters to get to your email and respond to the emails and just start the day with that excitement, then that is how your entire day is going to go. Instead, start your day by balancing these excitatory neurotransmitters. And the way Ayurveda suggests to balance it is by doing a oil massage. I know, I wish I can see all of you to ask you how many of you have heard about oil massage. But this is a signature thing that is mentioned in Ayurveda, where warm oil is poured all over your body. And this is going to be the best thing that you could do to balance this excitatory neurotransmitters. This is something that's going to be balancing your senses. This is something that is going to be giving you that glow to your skin. This is something that is going to be protecting you from that sun, acts as a sunscreen as well. So this oil massage that you do in the morning also acts as a food to your system, right? Because your skin is a biggest mouth and it is able to absorb all of this into the body. So when this is absorbed, it acts as a food to your system as well. So start your day by applying warm oil all over your body. And sesame oil is recommended. And this sesame oil is a big booster for both calcium and magnesium, which lowers cortisol levels, right? And we have seen that magnesium in corporation, and now you can see that a lot of medical doctors are recommending including magnesium in your diet and including magnesium supplements, because this is known to reducing your metabolic conditions like CVD as well. So sesame is a big booster for both calcium and magnesium. That's why oil massage with sesame oil, it will reset your circadian rhythm, because what is happening in the body? It is that equilibrium that is maintained. And for that equilibrium to be maintained, you are providing it to the body. You're providing that oil massage. And then morning sunlight and exercise to reset the circadian rhythm. And milk, if you're not a vegan and if you can consume milk, then warm milk with soaked almonds are also a source of calcium and magnesium in the body, which again lowers your cortisol levels and which also is going to be balancing your excitatory neurotransmitters. Yeah. Leela, I'm not looking at the chat. It's okay not to look at the chat. No, I know there are some messages that are coming up.
Yes.
It's going to be at the end.
We'll take it at the end of the session.
Okay. Sounds good. So that is how we're going to be bringing the balance. And this is a science behind. This is how I'm talking about how the ancient Vedic science is meeting modern medicine, where modern medicine is talking about calcium and magnesium is important. You include that as supplements to lower your cortisol levels, reduce your CVD. And the same thing Ayurveda has mentioned 5,000 years ago in the form of warm oil massages, in the form of atapa sevana, which is exposing yourself to sunlight. Again, you don't have to have a direct sunlight, but exposing yourself to sunlight, doing exercise in the morning, and including your breakfast in the form of warm milk and soaked almonds. So this rhythm, how are you going to create a rhythm, right? Remember that you want to create that. So far, don't forget about what has happened so far. Today's a new day. We're going to create a new rhythm. You have to unlock the potential. Remember that gastrin is high in the midday, and this is responsible for breaking down of the food. And Ayurveda has mentioned that Pitta Kala, which is when the sun is at its peak, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., is when you have to eat your meal. And that is where gastrin is high in the midday, and so is insulin sensitivity. So you eat a big meal in the morning, which is able to break down and which allows your tissue strength, which allows for your tissues to grow properly. As the day progresses, insulin sensitivity reduces as well. Something that is very important for us to go back and understand, because we're used to working so much, and especially a lot of my clients come and work for big software companies, and there's always a working lunch. There's no time for you to eat. So you're rushing, and the only time that you get to eat is in the evening when you get home. When you get home, you want to relax and have a lavish, elaborate dinner. But remember we're then not working according to the rhythms that are created for us outside the universe. The rhythm is created in such a way that the meal is digested very well in the midday. So regardless of where you're working, how you're working, it is important that you take a break between 10:30 to 12:30. Take a break and eat a big meal at that time. Tan mana bhunjita. Eat a big meal, and then as the day progresses, insulin sensitivity reduces, no? So you want to eat a smaller meal at that time. So with knowing all of this, how must your typical day be? Start your day with exercise. Abhyanga is an oil massage that we spoke about to balance the excitatory neurotransmitters like cortisol. Afternoon meal. Eat your big meal in the afternoon as gastrin is high and insulin sensitivity is also low, is also high. And evening routine. Include some breath work, because evening, remember, at about 3 or 4, call it as an afternoon slump, right? At that time, incorporate some herbal tea, not coffee. And Ashish, maybe you can add this also as a reference. Coffee is known to block adenosine, which is a neurotransmitter that is released in the evening, which helps with sleep pressure. If you're adding coffee at that time, it blocks the adenosine and it will mask your ability to be able to sleep late in the night, right? Because this neurotransmitter is blocking adenosine. So, including some breath work in the evening and herbal tea in the evening as cortisol and dopamine drops. Because the excitatory neurotransmitters are dropping in the evening, which means you don't have that much high. You're not that high in the evening. So, to be able to support you through the dinner time, you can give some herbal tea. And then eat light dinner and go to bed at 10 p.m. as melatonin is high and insulin resistance is also high. So this must be your typical day. Now we'll talk about typical night. Growth hormone, like we spoke about earlier, is activated at night. And thinking, that's what I spoke about the other client that I saw today, that she's been experiencing a lot of trauma for the past 25 years. And that trauma creates and increases a lot of neurotransmitters. And that creates substance in the body. We think that the thoughts that we have are just thoughts and they don't have a form. These thoughts are the one that can create a form later on. How many of times have you experienced this? That something has been manifested in your life, and whatever has been manifested is something that you have already thought about maybe few years back. This has happened to me several times. Anything that comes to me in my life, that is something that I have always thought about. But also during this process, there is a lot of debris that's created. That cleansing needs to happen. And that cleansing is happening at the night. So deep sleep, we spoke about all of that, 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. Lack of sleep declines the glymphatic system, and thus the debris is not removed, and thus can increase metabolic conditions and even CVD. The reason I included more of the CVD is I know a lot of us here are concerned about heart, and that's why I included all the articles related to CVD. So how does ancient approach meet modern science? Abhyanga reduces excitatory neurotransmitters, including good fats, including ghee in the diet, clarified butter, avocado, good fats, because you have a lot of juices in the body that are necessary to function. Your white matter must function so that you're able to absorb things. Whatever you're hearing, you must absorb and retain it. And that retention is going to happen only if your fat tissue functions properly, no? If not, it doesn't function properly. You will not have that much of a retention. So that is the collagen that the modern science talks about. Breath work, introducing breath work, because your mind and the outside layer of your mind is the breath, and the outside layer of your breath is the body. So breath is something that is close to your mind. So doing breath work, any pranayama, is a mood stabilizer according to modern science. Agni balance is something that we do in Ayurveda, and modern medicine is talking about gut health. And Panchakarma, I'm sure a lot of you have heard about this fancy terminology called Panchakarma. And this is used and also abused, I'll say, because, and of course, a lot of people do it in a not so right way, and that's why problems have also happened. But Panchakarma is an Ayurvedic amazing approach, which I call almost like a surgery, because removing all the toxins that have made home for several years. And this is one way that Panchakarma is able to remove those toxins. And detox is the terminology that's used in modern science. Now, in the next 15 minutes, I'm going to quickly tell you what are the protocols that you would want to use in general conditions that you experience, because these are all normal things that you experience on a daily life. How does Ayurveda approach all of these conditions? When there's fever, remember that fever can happen due to different reasons. It can happen if you were studying for your exams and you did not sleep at all for the past 1 week or 10 days, and you did not eat well, sleep well, you were just studying, and your tissues are all burnt out. And then, because of that tiredness and fatigue, is when fever can happen. Or you're out and about in hot sun eating spicy salsa with red hot chilies, and that can also be a reason of your fever. Or you are out and about in cold winter night eating an ice cream that can block your channels, and that can also create fever. Remember, the causative factors are several and they're very, very different. How can the approach be the same? We cannot just be giving Tylenol to suppress because your body is giving a message. That is a message your body is saying, whatever you've done is not right. You better address that, is how the body is giving you a message in the form of fever. So finding a causative factor, I only spoke about, but there are many, many other ways. But finding the causative factor, then looking at the associated symptoms along with your fever. Then the most important thing that we say is fast your fever until you get real hunger. We do not talk about, oh my God, you're already weak. We want to give you nutrients. No, we will say fast until you have real hunger. Do not drink plain water. Always boil your water with some herbs, and that boiled water is what we ask you to drink. No head baths at all, and no exercise at all. And again, we all know the modern approach. Reducing temperature is the primary goal. Every 4 hours, Tylenol or Advil. Eating nourishing foods. You must eat properly because you're already weak. Maintaining hydration with fruit juice or Gatorade is something that's much mentioned. No restrictions with regards to your baths or exercise. Now, post-acute fever, there are Panchakarma therapies. These are all the detox methods like Virechana, which is creating loose stools, may help in removing of the residual pitta or the residual heat that is present. So fast until there is hunger. Sip on boiled and cooled water or decoction until there is hunger. And these are the herbs that can be used. Dry ginger, guduchi, shadangodak, or chamomile that is present. You can make, herbal teas and drink that. Once hunger is back, introduce rice gruel with some spices like dry ginger, ajwain, all of these you must introduce so that you are supporting your tissues and you're not, depleting your tissues. You can also introduce something like paddy puffed rice, raisins are some alternatives if you're unable to fast completely, because we're not used to fasting so much. And if that's creating a lot of weakness, then you can introduce some raisins and paddy puffed rice so that you are able to retain some amount of energy. If you're a meat eater, you can always consider including bone broth in your diet. Yeah. So that's your fever protocol. Then, if there's common cold, again, the same thing. It is important to address the causative factor. Steam with a drop of eucalyptus oil. You can get like a pot of water, boil it, add some eucalyptus oil into it, and get some steam so that there's some opening up of the blockages that happens. And focus on breath work to improve your lung capacity so that you're using your own soldiers. The soldiers that you have in your body are your own tissues, your own bioelements, your own digestive fire. These are the soldiers that you must use. This is your team that you must use when you're experiencing any of this. So focus on breath work to improve your nasal capacity. Nasya is an amazing type of technique that is mentioned in Ayurveda, where of course, you shouldn't do this when you're actively experiencing common cold, or when you're experiencing, nasal drip. But you can incorporate this when you are prone to common cold. When you're more prone to common cold, in between episodes, you can use something called nasya, pouring of nasal oil drops into both the nostrils to clear the nasal passages. Salt and turmeric water gargles are some things that you can use also. Again, modern approach is no emphasis on breath, decongestant nasal sprays, which mechanically opens up the pathways, and local anesthetic sprays to numb what is happening in the throat. Because if there is any pain or any of the burning that you're experiencing, there are local anesthetic sprays that can be used to numb it. But again, I'm going to repeat this one more time. These are all the messages that our body is giving us. Let's listen to those messages. Nasya and steam therapy are both part of Panchakarma and are beneficial for chronic respiratory conditions. Allergies, same thing. If you're experiencing, a lot of people say that, oh, because there's pollen, I'm experiencing allergy. And the place that I'm living in the street that I'm living in, luckily all the trees are alive. But a lot of places, unfortunately, cutting down, and my next street and street after that, all the residents, they went ahead and they put a petition to cut down all the trees, but because there was pollen that's being created from the trees. I'm not saying that that's a wrong thing or right thing, and I'm not judging it, but also go ahead and turn inwards and see, why am I more prone to allergies now when I was not allergic in the past? What is the diet that I'm consuming, and what's the lifestyle that I'm consuming? Go back to the three pillars that we spoke about. Expel the hidden toxins responsible for this reaction, because there is a histaminic reaction. We're so used to popping a Zyrtec or a Claritin, and we're stopping that histaminic reaction. But let's see, what are the toxins that are reacting with the pollen? Because there's this sticky toxin, this pollen gets attacked, and that's when allergies are seen. Long-term commitment, but treats from the root. Worsening of the condition and spreading to different organs will not happen. Acquire immunity naturally following lifestyle, and don't have to worry about external pollutants. While modern approach, you can read it. Worsening of the condition is a possibility. Acquire instant immunity with vaccination is one option. And frequent checking of pollen count is something that you have to always be like, what's the pollen count like? Can I step out? Can I not step out? These are all the things that you have to be, paying attention to. So again, protocol to overcome common cold, address digestion if that's a contributor. Go back to agni, correct your agni, balance your agni. Practice nasya using anutailam. Apply warm sesame oil mixed with rock salt on your chest, and take steam with edible camphor or eucalyptus oil. Consume half a teaspoon of ginger juice. You can get fresh ginger, cut it into small pieces, mash it, squeeze the juice out of it. Take half a teaspoon of that with 1 teaspoon of honey. And I'm giving you some, herbs here if you want to use it. And this is safe for everybody. And that's why I chose to use, mention it here. Sitopaladi churna twice a day. Gargle using warm water mixed with salt and turmeric. Eat light and warm foods. And then again, last one, I'm rushing because I want to be able to take more questions and I don't want to be leaving all the questions. So food poisoning, Very, very common. And again, these are all the common things, and that's why I wanted to incorporate. What do we do for food poisoning a lot of times is take an Imodium or take antiemetic or antidiarrheal to stop it because we're worried about dehydration. Again, this is another message that our body is giving. Support the body. I am not saying that you should blindly allow, if you're experiencing 15 vomitings or loose stools, you should blindly allow them to go out, but support it. Give boiled water to sip. Use transdermal route. We spoke about how skin is the biggest route, biggest skin, and use the transdermal route to support the lost fluids. Strengthening of tissues to avoid recurrence. Yeah, so that is how you must provide. And the next slide will tell. Take 1/4 teaspoon of, just 2 days back, I've had a client call me and she said, I don't know what happened. I went to a restaurant and I've had 15 loose stools so far today. What do you want me to do? All I asked her to do is take 1/4 teaspoon of dry ginger powder, 1/4 teaspoon of jaggery, along with, I've also asked her to take ghee at that time. And she took it only 2 times, and that did the trick. And next day she did not, she was back to normal. And she was again staying on rice broths, thin vegetable broths. And she was again sipping on boiled and cool water, rested as much as possible. It was not necessary for her to get an IV rehydration or Gatorade or anything of that. Because she knew what the culprit was. She was allowing the culprit to go out of the body and supporting the digestive fire during that time. You can make a tea with cumin, coriander, and fennel seeds and sip on it. So following this, food poisoning and mild Panchakarma interventions like Virechana will help restore the balance and cleanse the toxins. Remember, when a group of us go and only 2 or 3 of us experience food poisoning, that means this culprit that we have consumed accidentally is reacting with our toxins that are present in the body. This reaction is giving us a message in the form of food poisoning. Then we should not suppress it. Because if you're suppressing it, then you're allowing the toxin to stay back in the body. And that toxin now will find a new home. And that new home is going to be creating problems. You're going to be seeing maybe asthma, or maybe eczema, or maybe irritable bowel syndrome. We would never attribute that to these suppressed food poisoning. Rerouting of the toxins happen. So that is why it is important for us to recognize what to do when this is happening. So Panchakarma in Ayurveda, and this is something that Ashish wanted me to introduce as well. A lot of times, all of us think that Panchakarma is, that happy. Someone came to me and they said, I see these happy pictures which shows that people are getting nice abhyangas, pouring off the oil on the forehead. They look very blissful. That is not Panchakarma. That is only preparation for Panchakarma. Pancha is 5, karma is action. Removing these aggravated toxins that are creating imbalances by different techniques is Panchakarma. And that is done by Vamana, which is vomiting, Virechana, which is loose stools, or Basti, which is enema, or Nasya, which is the nose drops that we spoke about. The 5th one is Rakta Mokshana, which is not allowed here in the United States, and so we don't do that, which is, bloodletting, removal of bad blood in the body. So for this, there is a lot of preparation that must be done. We always look at what is the age of the client, how many toxins, what is the amount of toxins that this client carry, where is this amount in the body? Is it in the upper abdomen, lower abdomen? Where is it manifested as? And taking all of this into consideration, we have to look at the eligibility criteria. Not everybody is eligible. Once we know that this client is eligible, then we tell them you have to go through these extensive diet changes, and we give them medicated ghee so that we soak the toxins. There's this this kind of a interaction between this is your tissue and this is your toxin. They've created a bond. This medicated ghee is going to create a layer between this bond, and so will be easy for the toxins to go out of the body. That is what we do. It begins with deepana and pachana, which is kindling of the fire, digestive fire. And then we give proper medicated ghee to create that layer and remove the toxins. At the end of it, one day, depending on where the toxins are, we will either do vomiting or virechana, which is creating loose stools, or medicated enemas. So this is what Panchakarma in Ayurveda in nutshell. Any questions? I am happy to answer. I know I stopped exactly at 15 minutes before 7 so that we have time for questions.
Thank you for a wonderful talk and, explaining at least the basics of what Ayurveda is, the different concepts of it. And that kind of helps, I think, most of us to understand the depth of Ayurveda, right? So there are a lot of questions out here. I can begin with the initial question regarding buttermilk and milk. So one was the question was, what are the benefits of buttermilk? Can you replace buttermilk with milk or with yogurt? And on the same scale, if you're not able to handle like milk, then can you use almond milk or any of the nuts?
And this is a very common question, right, Leela? So buttermilk and yogurt, I call it as yogurt as a pregnant lady and buttermilk as a lady that has just delivered the child. Because when you look at the properties of both of them, yogurt has that sticky property and it can block the channels. But buttermilk, when you drink it, it does not have the sticky property. Again, buttermilk, I'm not talking about the commercial one that's available, but maybe getting 1 part of yogurt, adding 4 parts of water to it, churn it really, really well until it becomes very thin and a uniform liquid. And that when you drink, you already feel that there's a throat choke. That is how it allows for the cleansing of the channels along with creating the probiotic. Yogurt is a probiotic, there's no doubt. But it can block the channels also. And there are many restrictions around yogurt. You can only eat in the afternoon. You have to mix it with either amla so that it does not create that blockage in the channels. That is why I recommend buttermilk more than yogurt. Now, coming to the second question of if you're not tolerant to milk, can you use almond milk? You can absolutely use almond milk, but do not expect the results that you would get from the actual animal milk, because the protein, the whole protein that you get from here is not the same from the almond milk, because it depends on where you're getting it from. You'll get the properties of almonds if you drink almond milk. You cannot get the benefits of an animal, the protein that you get from there. That is not possible. And again, the fermentation is different and the process is different. However, even though I've seen this a lot with a lot of clients that come to me for bloating, indigestion, acidity. I've seen that even though milk is not something that they can handle, buttermilk in small quantities they can absolutely handle, even though when it comes from animal milk. So you can try that and let me know. Ghee is also another very, very powerful thing, introducing it. Even though milk is not tolerable to the body, ghee and buttermilk are 2 products that you can use from the animal source, and it can easily support you and nourish you.
Thank you. Next questions. Can the negative cold effect on agni from ice cream or salads be offset by drinking warm water at the same time?
Very good question. So more than drinking with warm water, I would say adding a pinch of dry ginger powder is what I say, because that can also rekindle your agni, and eating it in the afternoon time where your agni is much more. And do not eat it right after your meal, because if you're eating right after your meal, you're already trying to digest your meal. You're adding this cold thing onto your meal. So eating it away from your meal in the midday and drinking a ginger tea along with, or any herbal tea or warm, I mean, more than warm water, any of the herbal teas are going to be more beneficial and helping in digestion. Life is to have fun. What's life without ice creams, no? So, yes.
Right. The next is we tend to refrigerate some food and reheat and eat it later. Are there any adverse effects?
So there's a concept called prana in Ayurveda called life force. This life force that is present in the food is identified by the life force of our body, our agni, and our digestive enzymes. And that is how transformation happens. When you refrigerate your food, remember that the life force is reducing. And these are all the experiments I've done when I was doing my pharmaceutics, masters in pharmaceutics, that you have to always put an expiry date on all the medicines, no? What is an expiry date on all the medicines? You already know that the potency of the medicine is reduced when you put it at room temperature, it reduces at this time. When you refrigerate it, it reduces at this time. When you freeze it, it reduces at this time. These are the experiments that we do. Same exact way, your potency of the food or the life force of the food is reduced when you refrigerate it and reheat it. So you're compromising the capacity of your body to recognize that element, because the earth element in your body has to recognize the earth element of your food and then convert it. So this is going to be compromised. Again, I will not say that you have to lead a life of a rishi. If you have to eat, of course, it is possible with, you can use Instapots, and you can use air fryers, you can use an oven, you can use meal prep, all of these plans that you can do so that you can minimize refrigeration. It is not completely possible to live a life where refrigerator is completely taken out of the house. I would love to do that, but understanding what happens, and in generally following fresh food, but sometimes when there is not a possibility, doing refrigeration is what I would recommend. Always look at balance.
You talked about sesame oil. The question is, what kind of sesame oil can be used?
Organic, unrefined sesame oil. Kevala brand is something that's available on Amazon. You can absolutely buy that.
Okay. You talked about having a light dinner. What does a light dinner mean?
A light dinner comprises of a soup along with grain. A little bit of a grain and a soup is a light dinner, or some grain and vegetables, mixed vegetables, cooked vegetables, along with some lentils can also be your dinner. Generally, eating something that is less than what you would be eating for lunch. I would not want you to be elaborately eating a appetizer, a grain, like a dal, and then vegetables, and then meat, especially a lot of meat. So I would want you to reduce the amount of meat that you would be eating for dinner and include more meat for lunch instead. So light is eating more grains, vegetables, and lentils or soups for dinner.
Thank you. Ghee is fat and it also causes acidity. How important it is to use ghee? I've read a book by Andrew Well, who has strictly recommended not to consume ghee at all.
I would love to read that book also myself, because ghee is an important part of Ayurveda. And this ghee has to be processed properly, right? If the ghee is not processed properly, then absolutely you will be experiencing all of these concerns that you're mentioning about increase in cholesterol, not being able to digest. It has to be a cultured butter. What is a cultured butter? Milk must first be boiled. The cream that comes from the milk has to be fermented, has to be pasteurized, and it has to be fermented again, and it becomes your yogurt. You're culturing it, and it becomes yogurt. This yogurt, you're going to be churning it really well for the butter to come out. This butter, you're going to be heating for ghee to happen, clarified butter. Most of the times, the butter that we get in the market is from the cream of the milk, when you have churned from the cream of the milk, not from the cream of the yogurt. So it's important to get A2 cultured butter and make your ghee from that. And Start with only 1 teaspoon. Do not add more than that. In the beginning days, I've always forgotten to give the dosage. And one time my client came back in 2 weeks and she's like, this ghee is awful. I have so much bloating from it. I'm like, wow, what happened? I'm including 2 tablespoons for breakfast, 2 tablespoons for lunch, 2 tablespoons for dinner. I said, I never asked you to do that much. Start with 1 teaspoon. See how your body is acclimatizing to it. Then increase it. Then you will know how this is going to be a superfood. Again, if you're a vegan, I would never force you to do it. But this is something that has proven to have so many benefits. And it is also known to cross your blood brain barrier. Not a lot of fats are able to cross your blood brain barrier as well. So ghee is known to cross your blood brain barrier. That is why there are many medicated ghees that are present in Ayurveda, especially for manasa rogas, especially for anxiety, depression, schizophrenia. All of these conditions, we do prescribe a lot of medicated ghees, and I've seen tremendous improvement. So making sure that your digestion is first. Do no harm is the first principle of Ayurveda. While we are taking care of the manasa rogas or psychological conditions, we should not lose track of what's happening with the bloating. I cannot say, go to the gastroenterologist if you're experiencing bloating, don't come to me. I have to look at that also and address it. What's happening to your bowel movement? What is happening to this? All of this must be addressed before you give an entire treatment.
You mentioned not to go for commercial buttermilk, but would it be okay to use yogurt drink?
So instead of yogurt drink, what you could do is you can buy yogurt, like the plain yogurt, not the Greek yogurt, and you can add 4 parts of water to that, churn it, and make buttermilk. Yogurt drink is still very thick and it is not as beneficial.
How can we control our cortisol levels?
Abhyanga. Come to our clinic and we will pour oil on you all over, and we will reduce the flight or fight mode of your nervous system. And Shirodhara is something that is extremely beneficial in Ayurveda, where we pour oil on your forehead for about 40 to 50 minutes. You'll see the bliss right after. So cortisol levels, again, that's what we spoke about. These are excitatory neurotransmitters that we are thriving upon. If you have to perform, and this performance pressure is there everywhere. If you don't perform, if you're under 10%, even though you're doing your job, I was told that if you're under 10% in your team, then there's a risk of layoff. So we're constantly having to perform. And if you're constantly having to perform, this is going to be there. So Ayurveda talks about what are the things that you can do to mitigate if you know you have that kind of cortisol. I don't know if you were present in the beginning, whoever asked this question, but making sure that you sleep on time, making sure that you apply oil, making sure that you take some good almonds in your diet, and taking ghee in your diet. These are all the things that we spoke about.
Some more questions on ghee. What brand of ghee do you recommend?
There's something called Two Brothers, and there's Pure Indian Foods, and there's A2 More Ghee. There are 3 different brands that are present, and they're all A2 cultured ghees.
And what brand of medicated ghee do you recommend?
I would not recommend anybody to start any medicated ghee unless you consult an Ayurvedic physician, because there's so many medicated ghees. There's hundreds of medicated ghees, and it is all specific to everybody. And those herbs, I typically don't give any herbs out, but anything that is beneficial for everybody without any problem is what I would give. I would prefer that you consult with any Ayurvedic physician before you take any medicated ghee. Don't self.
Okay, I think we have 3 minutes. Can you use MTB coconut oil?
You can, but remember, if you have already a lot of clogging in your arteries, to make sure the arterial health is very important. Coconut oil is very dense. So you want to make sure that you have proper digestive fire and your arterial health is good, and include that. Start with 1 teaspoon. See how that is, and then increase that. Absolutely okay to include that as an alternative to ghee. I'm sure that's what the question was.
I think we've covered, except for frozen foods. Is it okay to have frozen peas and, frozen vegetables?
So again, it is convenience is very important. If I were to say things, I would say have a farm for yourself, have a cow in your backyard, and grow your own vegetables. If that's not possible, at least go to a farmer's market, and those are at least a little bit fresher, and get those for some time. And you can use frozen peas. If you come to my home and you'll see some frozen peas in my refrigerator. I will not lie. So the balance is what I would talk about. I would never say, you should strictly follow this only. Balance is necessary. So as much as fresh vegetables as you can introduce is going to be beneficial.
Thank you. And somebody wants to know your clinic address. Maybe you can type it in.
Yes, I can send the website.
Yeah. I think we are good with most questions here.
So Ashish, you're muted.
Yeah, I just thought that we would open it up for Dr. Molina and Manju to kind of have a talk and discuss some of the things that Dr. Molina may have in his mind about Ayurveda and things that he might want to ask you as well.
Well, actually, this is just sort of a statement. It's not a question. And it is how do we know? How do we acquire knowledge? So we acquire knowledge by the scientific method. Or scientific method, most recently, is about 100 to 150 years old. Sometimes even if we go all the way to Michelangelo and some of the astronomers a little bit older than that. But in Ayurveda, knowledge is also acquired by tradition. And it's a tradition of things that we have seen and done which have worked. And even though they have not gone through the rigorous experimental process, they have actually survived the test of time. And time is actually a very, very good tester for knowledge. I want to just sort of make a comment because I have gone through Panchakarma treatments, and I was aware of the processes that were going through me.
Uh-huh.
And you get this process of oleation, as you mentioned.
Yes.
And then you start the process of Panchakarma, the 5. And what I recognized happening as I was going through oleation, which is you're eating large amounts of ghee as you get ready to start the treatment. What that ghee does is stimulates the secretion of bile. Now, bile is made of cholesterol, it's made of lecithin and bile acids. So bile, which is a soap that is required to absorb the ghee, is made of 2 products that are associated with cholesterol itself, and the bile acids that are made of cholesterol. So what happens during the process of oleation is that you increase a biliary flow, the production of bile made of the cholesterol, bile acids, and lecithin. Then you take castor oil, and castor oil acidifies your ileum. That's where your bile acids get absorbed. And therefore, the bile acids cannot get absorbed in this acidified ileum, and you have diarrhea. You get a secretory diarrhea. And you ultimately, what you're doing is you're excreting large amounts of cholesterol in the form of bile acids. Then you're still having this flow going, and you start the treatments. Some of the treatments are, as you mentioned, some nausea. They also involve sweating. Also involve abhyanga, pisacelli. And what they do is they swell up your skin with heat and oil. And if you think about it, the blood vessels do not interact with your cells. The blood vessels interact with the interstitial fluid, this fluid that bathes the cells. That is how everything is happening. So those cells, they don't drain into the venous circulation, they drain into the lymphatic system, which is how the fat gets absorbed also, and the ghee gets absorbed in your digestion. So in the process of Panchakarma, you get swollen up, and then shrunken down.
Mm-hmm.
And then you excrete it through the stool,
Mm-hmm.
asti. So what is happening is you're actually washing your cells by expanding the interstitial fluid and contracting the interstitial fluid through the bile system, through the lymphatic system, which drains into the bile, and then you excrete it through basti. So anyhow, that the other way I see it is actually what I call a poor man's Panchakarma. So poor man's Panchakarma is what my kids ask me when I'm at the beach and I'm just sort of standing in the water to my arm, because there is 4 millimeters of mercury pressure difference per foot between your toes and your heart. So that all the interstitial fluid that you have, that's why you get this sort of like skin that prickles. You get all this interstitial fluid pumped back by hydrostatic pressure into your lymphatic system. And then, you don't want to talk about it, but sometimes people urinate in the ocean.
Yeah.
And what they do is they just contract, and then when they get out of the water, they re-expand.
Absolutely.
Contract and you re-expand. So this, Panchakarma is not magic. It's not a miracle. There's a beautiful physiologic process of bathing your cells.
Beautifully, beautifully mentioned, Dr. Molina. And absolutely, that's how we use the system. And again, when you said that acid is released via the bile, we also use different techniques. There is vamana, there's also releasing it upwards, right? Vomiting is also one system, and basti is also one system. Depending upon the quality of those doshas, different methods are introduced. And so grateful that you were able to articulate it so well. And I wanted to talk about acquiring knowledge. When you first mentioned, Ayurveda has talked about 4 pramanas, is what we call. Pramanas is the way that you are able to understand the knowledge. The first one is pratyaksha, which is we're seeing it, we read in a book, someone has said that ghee should not be used, and we read in a book and we believe it. The second thing is anumana, inference. There's a smoke there must be a fire. So getting to the second stage of understanding the knowledge. Then aptopadesha, which means it's mentioned by great sages or great people like Dr. Molina. You've explained it so beautifully well. And because of your experience, oh, it must be right. So that's aptopadesha. And then the yukti, using your own logic to, do I use this Panchakarma technique? Do I use that Panchakarma? Do I use the poor man's Panchakarma technique? Do I use this? So that's a yukti that we use. So these are all mentioned in Ayurveda. So thank you so much for beautifully bringing all of that up and having a wonderful session here, Dr. Molina.
Well, thank you for joining us, and we're very, very appreciative of sort of returning back to what really is the platform of the South Asian Heart Center, which is this sort of science-based Vedic approach to health, or Ayurveda.
Yes, my pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you both. I think, we all got so much out of this presentation today. And I wish that we can kind of continue a series where we can go deeper into this and, invite you again to participate, and maybe invite a panel of your choice of other practitioners who can shed light and talk about different aspects and different areas of their expertise, so we can have a community well educated, on this topic.
Ashish, I don't want to be the person with the last word, so I will say this and then you will follow through. But, we have talked about different food groups and foods and ghee and milk and yogurt and other food products, but it's also on refrigeration and the effect of sort of eating leftover food. But there's also a very important quality, and that is the quality of the heart of the person who prepares the food.
Of course.
And I can tell you that I have never been able to prepare the pasta that my grandmother used to make.
Oh.
And we would tell my mother, as little kids, Mom, why can't you cook like this?
Of course, it's always made out of love, and that has different qualities to it.
Correct.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely agree with that one.
Well, with that, I think it's a good time to kind of go back to your mother's cooking, waiting for you for dinner. and kind of
Yes.
enjoy it in the way that Dr. Molina enjoyed his grandma's pasta.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Yes, thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank
I
you so
think
much.
absolutely
Thank you.
how you've mentioned Panchakarma, it is important that we dissect it that way. This is only an introductory session, and then dissecting it in the science is going to be amazing.
Awesome. We have recorded this session. I'm stopping the recording now,
Yeah.
but you will have this in a few days at the link that I had posted already. So you should be able to watch it or send it to people who have not watched this session and might benefit from it. So thank you so much. And thank you, Leela, for moderating. You were able to cover all the questions. It is always hard because there are so many of them, but you did a great job. And thank you for answering all of them.
They do make the sessions.
Yes. And Dr. Molina, I'm going to remember the next time I go in shoulder deep into
the
the
ocean.
water, that what it's all about.
Don't say a lot
Actually,
about
I
this.
did write a paper. I was a co-author of a paper in the American Journal of Physiology about head out water immersion. So, I mean, I just didn't make that up. We wrote a paper on this.
There was a science behind
There's a
it.
science behind it. Yes, there is a science behind Panchakarma. So thank you so much. Enjoy the evening.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And thank you for
Thank you.
all the attendants who actually keep the liveliness of the huddle with all their questions and attention. Bye-bye.
Yes. Agree. Thank you so much.
Okay.
It's
Bye-bye.
given me courage to go for Panchakarma. I was like, I mean,